I knew something was wrong the second my son said it without looking at me. The house should be in my wife's name now. No pause. No apology. Just a statement, like he was telling me the trash went out late. I'm Evelyn Carter, 72 years old, and I've lived in this house longer than my son has been alive. I paid it off. I fixed it. I buried my husband from the bedroom down the hall. And in one sentence, my own child decided I was optional. We were sitting at my kitchen table. Same table where I taught him spelling words. Same chipped mug I've used for years. His coffee sat untouched. That detail stuck with me more than it should have. His wife, Melissa, sat beside him scrolling through her phone. She didn't look shocked. She didn't even look curious. That's when I realized this wasn't new. This had been planned, discussed, agreed on. Without me. I asked him what he meant, even though I already knew. Sometimes you ask just to hear how far someone's willing to go. Mom, don't make this dramatic, he said, sighing like I was the problem. We're married. We need stability. It makes sense for the house to be under Melissa's name. You're not getting any younger. There it was. Age. Used like a weapon wrapped in concern. I reminded him calmly that the deed was in my name, that I paid the taxes, that his father and I bought this place when he still slept with a nightlight. Melissa finally looked up and smiled tight, like a nurse explaining something obvious. That can be changed. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. I'd spent my whole life handling paperwork. Bills. Loans. Forms that kept roofs over heads. They thought I was tired. Confused. Ready to be managed. We already scheduled a notary, my son added. You'll sign next week. You can still live here, of course. Live here. Like a guest. Like furniture they hadn't thrown out yet. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I nodded once. Inside something shifted. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. And as they left the kitchen, I realized something simple and dangerous. If they thought this was just paperwork, then paperwork was exactly how I was going to answer. They thought my silence meant surrender. They had no idea what I was about to do next. The next morning I walked lead. I came downstairs and realized my kitchen didn't belong to me anymore. My spice rack was gone, replaced with matching glass jars. My kettle was shoved to the back. A drawer I'd used for decades was emptied into a plastic bin labeled miscellaneous. Melissa stood there sipping coffee she hadn't made. You'll get used to it, she said. It's more efficient this way. Efficient. That word became her favorite. Efficient space. Efficient storage. Efficient use of me. My son had already left for work. He'd stopped asking if I needed anything months ago. Around the same time they stopped paying utilities and started calling everything temporary. I washed my cup slowly. Melissa watched, waiting for resistance. When none came, she relaxed. That was her mistake. People think quiet means weak. At my age, quiet just means I'm buying time. Later, she suggested I move upstairs. We want the downstairs room for an office. That room was where my husband died. She didn't know, or didn't care. I'll think about it, I said. She smiled, satisfied. She thought that meant eventually. For me, it meant I'm measuring you. That afternoon, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside were deeds, tax records, bank statements, folded the way my husband used to fold them. The house was paid off 18 years ago. I had the receipt. Property taxes? Every single year. When my son lost his job, I covered his car payments for 9 months. None of it had ever been called mine. That was my mistake. That night, my son casually mentioned the notary again. Thursday at 10. I nodded. I asked which notary. He looked surprised but told me. He didn't ask why. That night, I didn't sleep angry. I slept focused. They thought this was about family. They were wrong. This was about ownership, control, and a woman they underestimated. They thought Thursday would end this. They didn't know I had another appointment first. I didn't tell them where I was going the next morning. I just grabbed my purse, my keys, and the calm that comes when you stop explaining yourself. The bank clerk smiled the way people smile at older women when they expect confusion. I corrected that assumption fast. I asked for printed statements. 10 years back. Ownership records. Authorization access. She hesitated. I waited. Waiting is a skill you learn when people assume you don't have options. By the time I left, I had a folder thick enough to matter. At home, Melissa was on the phone, voice low and sharp. She ended the call too quickly when she saw the papers in my hand. Organizing, she asked. Yes, I said. Her eyes followed the folder longer than necessary. That told me everything. That afternoon I cross-checked dates. Property taxes matched my account. Repairs I paid for after they moved in. The water heater my son promised to reimburse me for, but never did. Then I found it. A document I'd signed 2 years earlier when he called it boring administrative stuff. Limited authorization. Temporary, he said. Just convenience. It was still active. I sat very still when that sank in. This wasn't confusion. This was planning. That night, my son brought up Thursday again. Firmer this time. Let's not complicate this, he said. I don't intend to, I replied. He studied me. You've been quiet. I've always been quiet. Yes, but this feels different. It was. And he could feel it slipping. Later, after they went to bed, I made a call I'd avoided for 15 years. A lawyer whose card I'd kept folded in my address book since my husband passed. I need an appointment, I said. Tomorrow if possible. There was a pause. Then, of course. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. They thought I was stalling. In reality, I was getting ready to end this cleanly. The lawyer didn't interrupt me once. I didn't tell a story. I laid out facts. Ownership. Payments. The authorization I wanted revoked. The future I wanted protected. When I finished, he nodded. You're in a strong position. I know, I said. I just forgot. We prepared documents, boring solid ones. The kind that hold up when voices rise. When I got home, my son was pacing the kitchen. The notary confirmed, he said. Thursday at 10. I won't forget. That night, I kept the folder by my bed. Not hidden. Not locked. Visible. I wasn't unsure anymore. By the next day, they stopped pretending this was a discussion. They sat me down at the table like I was a child. We need clarity, my son said. Melissa leaned forward. Married couples need authority. This needs to feel like our home. Our. I repeated. Yes, she said smoothly. I looked at my son. Really looked. At the impatience he wore like confidence. You already live here, I said. You don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. You've never paid the property tax. That's not the point, he snapped. And if I don't sign? I asked. There it was. We've looked into options, Melissa said calmly. Senior housing. Quiet. Safe. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because the last piece clicked. You already picked it out, I said. My son looked away. You planned my absence. I continued. Down to the square footage. If you don't sign, he said, voice hardening, this gets unpleasant. I waited before answering. You mean you'll make it unpleasant for me because you think I'll fold? Silence. Thursday at 10, he said. Please don't embarrass us. I won't, I replied. But I can't promise the same for you. That night, I underlined one sentence in my notes twice. Consent under pressure is not consent. They expected a signature on Thursday. What they were about to get was something they never planned for. The lock changed on a Tuesday. I noticed it when my key stopped halfway, like the house didn't recognize me anymore. I tried again. Slower. Same result. For a moment, I just stood there on the porch with my pharmacy bag cutting into my wrist, listening to traffic pass like nothing in my life had shifted. Then the door opened. Melissa smiled like I was a delivery. Oh right. We updated the locks. Security reasons. I looked past her. My hallway. My coat hook. My son's shoes by the door. Do I get a key? I asked. Daniel has it, she said. He's working. I walked inside without another word. My son barely looked up when I told him. He rubbed his forehead like I was a headache he didn't have time for. It's temporary, he said. Everything is temporary with you, I replied. Except decisions. That night, I noticed my dresser drawers had been shifted. Not opened. Shifted. Like someone had checked how much space I took up. They weren't hiding it anymore. At dinner, they didn't ask if I wanted food. I ate toast alone in my room. Crumbs on a napkin. Like a child being punished quietly. I wasn't angry. I was done misreading signals. The next morning, my son knocked on my door. "We can't live like this," he said. "The tension." "There's no tension from me," I replied. "Only resistance." He flinched. "You raised me better than this," he said. "I did," I answered. "That's why I'm disappointed." Thursday came closer. They thought the lock was pressure. What it really was, evidence. They thought changing the lock would make me smaller. Instead, it made me dangerous. Wednesday morning. I left the house without explaining myself. I locked the door with the new key and felt nothing about it. Locks only matter if you let them. At the lawyer's office, I didn't hesitate. We finalized everything, revoked access, formal notices, clean timelines. No drama. Just clarity. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes." When I got home, my son was waiting. "Where were you?" he demanded. "Out," I said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're entitled to." Melissa crossed her arms. "You're not planning something strange, are you?" "I'm planning something appropriate." That night, the house felt watchful. Doors closed softly. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. I slept anyway. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully. Navy. Gray. Calm. Not apologetic. My son drove. Melissa sat in front. I sat in back, watching familiar streets pass like old friends. At the notary's office, they were confident. Too confident. When we were called in, the notary adjusted her glasses and said, "Before we begin, there's an additional document to address." My son frowned. "What document?" She looked at me. "Submitted this morning by Mrs. Carter." Silence hit the room like a dropped plate. "What did you do?" my son whispered. "I corrected an assumption," I said. Melissa laughed sharply. "She's confused." The notary raised her hand. "The documents are valid." Confused. There it was. Then the words landed. Authorization revoked. Occupancy notice issued. My son's face drained of color. "You're kicking us out?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm asking you to leave. The same way you asked me to disappear." I signed calmly. They didn't. They walked into that office expecting control. They walked out knowing they'd lost it. They packed like people who didn't want to admit they were losing. Fussed. Quiet. No eye contact. My son avoided me completely that first night. Melissa moved through the house like she was late for something important. Drawers opening and closing harder than necessary. I stayed in my room and let them move. Control gets loud when it's failing. The next morning, I made real breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee strong enough to remind me I was still here. I ate at the table. Melissa walked in, stopped short, then turned away without a word. Boxes appeared by noon. I noticed what they took first. Electronics. Clothes. Anything expensive. They left behind what didn't fit the future they'd planned without me. That afternoon, my son finally spoke. "You didn't have to bring lawyers into this," he said, standing in my doorway like a guest. "I didn't bring them," I replied. "I used them." He sighed. "This feels extreme." "It only feels extreme because you expected obedience." He looked tired then. Older. For a moment, I saw the boy who used to panic if he thought I forgot to pick him up from school. "What am I supposed to tell people?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "That you assumed something that wasn't yours." That evening my phone rang. It was my granddaughter, Hannah. "Grandma," she said softly. "Dad told me some things. I wanted to hear your side." I sat down. "Some conversations deserve your full body." "I didn't throw anyone out," I told her. "I set boundaries." "I know," she said. "I've seen how they talk to you." That nearly broke me. "I'm proud of you," she added. That mattered more than everything else. They were losing a house. I was gaining proof of who actually saw me. By Friday morning, the house sounded hollow. Not empty. Hollow. There's a difference. The moving truck arrived on time. 2 young men worked efficiently. careful not to get involved in a story they could feel but not hear. Melissa stayed on the phone the whole time, narrating a version where she was calm, reasonable, wronged. My son lingered. "We'll need to come back for a few things," he said. "You'll call first," I replied. "And I'll be home." That stung him. At the door he hesitated. "I never meant to hurt you." "I believe that," I said. "But intention doesn't erase impact." He nodded and left. When the truck pulled away, the street went quiet again. No drama. No relief that needed announcing. I closed the door and turned the lock. My lock. That afternoon, I cleaned deliberately. I put my mugs back where they belonged. I aired out rooms. I scrubbed the pale square on the wall where Melissa's whiteboard used to hang. That night, I found an old photo they'd forgotten, me and my husband in the garden. I placed it back on the mantel, right in the center. The next week, a notary came to my dining table. This time for me. My granddaughter sat nearby, not to support me, but to witness. The trust was finalized. Access limited. Future protected. I signed without hesitation. Later, Hannah squeezed my hand. "You taught me something," she said. I smiled. I just stopped negotiating my worth. They thought the story was over when they left. They didn't know what came next would test them even more. The backlash didn't come loud. It came polite. Neighbors started asking questions. Careful ones. Was everything okay? Was my son doing all right? Someone mentioned, casually, that they heard I'd changed my will suddenly. I smiled. I answered calmly. I listened. That's how I learned Melissa hadn't stopped. She'd just changed tactics. A letter arrived one afternoon from a law office I didn't recognize. Heavy paper. Expensive envelope. Inside were questions about my mental capacity. Suggestions of undue influence. I read it twice, then placed it neatly in my folder. That evening my son called. "You got something in the mail today?" he asked. "Yes." "She's just upset," he added quickly. "Melissa. She feels excluded." "From what?" I asked. "My life or my assets?" Silence. The next day my granddaughter came over. She didn't ask permission, she belonged here. "They're telling people you're confused," she said. "That someone's manipulating you." I nodded. "And what do you think?" She didn't hesitate. "I think they're scared." That night, I called my lawyer again. We didn't dramatize. We prepared. Medical confirmations. Witness statements. Timelines. Pressure feeds on doubt. It starves on facts. A week later, my son showed up angry. "You've turned everyone against us," he snapped. "I haven't said a word," I replied. Silence does that when the truth has room to breathe. He paced. "You don't understand how this looks." "I understand exactly," I said. "It looks like a woman refusing to disappear quietly." That was when I knew. They weren't angry because they lost control. They were angry because it didn't work. They thought pressure would break me. Instead, it confirmed everything I'd already decided. The last time my son came over, he didn't bring arguments. He brought exhaustion. "You really thought this through," he said, sitting at my table like a stranger. "Yes," I replied. "For longer than you think." He stared at the wood. "I guess I didn't believe you'd actually stop." "That's the mistake people make," I said. "They confuse endurance with permission." He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He just nodded and left. And that was enough. Weeks passed. The house settled back into me. Not louder. Not happier. Just honest. I fixed the squeaky stair. I pruned the apple tree. I moved my chair back to where it had always been. The lamp no longer brushed my hand. One morning, I realized I hadn't thought about my son in hours. Not with anger. Not with strategy. Just space. People expect women my age to shrink. To accept discomfort as gratitude. To call silence grace. I did that for years. Not anymore. Love that costs you dignity isn't love. Family that requires your disappearance isn't family. And peace that depends on obedience isn't peace at all. I didn't win. I reclaimed. My home. My future. My voice. And if you're hearing this story and feeling that familiar pressure, to sign, to step aside, to stay quiet for everyone else's comfort, Remember this. You're allowed to say no. At any age. Without apology. Because the moment you stop shrinking, everything around you finally learns where the line is. If you felt this, hit like. If you want more real stories like this, subscribe. And comment I choose myself if this story spoke to you.